This video is on the basics of vectors. Any vector, as represented on a 2D surface, can be expressed in several ways depending on the perspective of the viewer and/or the coordinate system. For example, we might have an XY coordinate system that is given. Okay, good enough. Or our perspective might be in the clouds and we're looking down on the Earth's surface, and then up to the top of the page would be north. In this perspective, towards the top of the page is in the Y direction. But in some cases, top of the page could be north. Or in some cases, like when we're launching projectiles, we've got horizontal here, and we've got vertical in this direction. And you can see that if we're looking along the horizon, our perspective is definitely not the same as if we're in the clouds looking down on top of the Earth's surface. So we have to be very careful of our perspective whenever we look at a vector. For example, this vector here, we can write it several ways. We could say that it is 46 meters at 60 degrees above horizontal. If our perspective is on the ground and we're watching something be launched, we could say that. Or if our perspective is up above, we could say 46 meters at 60 degrees north of west. That might be what we mean. Again, it depends on what our coordinate system is. And one more that I would like to mention to you, and that would be I hat, and this is a J, and there's a little caret top on top of those, and these are called unit vectors. Unit vectors, they have a length of 1, and they point in the X direction for I, and in the Y direction for J. So what we could do is we could write this vector as looking like this. If we break it into its components would be 23 meters to the left, which is in the, look at the axis, that's in the negative I hat direction. And in the positive J hat direction, you check this out for yourself, 39.84 meters in the J hat direction. We're going 23 in the negative I hat direction, 39.84 in the J hat direction. So depending on our perspective, we're going to have to report our vector as we need to. Now, what I'm going to do for the rest of these, since you've probably in your earlier physics classes had a lot of exposure to above horizontal or below horizontal or north of west, we're just going to do I hat and J hat for these next couple. Again, the J hat vector points in the Y direction. It's got a magnitude of 1. The I hat vector points in the positive X direction. And so this vector would be represented as, basically we're taking this component here and we're taking that component there, and we're just writing it in a slightly different way. That would be 45.96 in the positive I hat direction and 45.96 in the positive J hat direction. You can put parentheses and then put the unit on the outside, or at the top of the screen you can see I put the unit in next to each term. Either one is okay. What would be another way to say this? 65 meters at 45 degrees above horizontal, if that's our point of view. Or if we're in the clouds looking down, what would this be? 65 meters at 45 degrees north of east. But I'm not going to write those down. I'm going to want to focus here on the unit vectors. All right, how about a couple more here? In this case, we're going to have a component that goes in the negative I hat direction, and also a component that goes in the negative J hat direction. We're going to go, and I already did these calculations for you, so you can check my work if you want. I got negative 12.26 in the I hat direction, and then negative 26.28 in the j hat direction, and we should put a unit on there, meters, like that. If we're in the clouds and we're looking down, we can describe this as 29 meters. What would this be? South of west. Or if we're on the side of a cliff and we're watching something go down, we could say, hey, it's 29 meters at 65 degrees below horizontal. So again, it's very important to take into account your perspective. Last one here. We're going in the positive I hat direction. We're going in the negative j hat direction. And what I got for this was 33.09 in the positive I hat direction minus 11.39 in the j hat direction. All right, if we took those four vectors and we added them up, what would we have to do? Add the I hats, add the j hats. I'll put add in quotation marks because if they point in the opposite direction, isn't it true? You're going to have to do a little subtracting. Pythagorize, inverse, tangentize. That's all one word, in case you're wondering. And by the way, those are two verbs that I believe I made up. Pythagorize and inverse tangentize. If you write it in vector form, you check if you want, but I got that the resultant vector would be 43.79 I hat positive plus 48.13 j hat meters. In unit vector form, that would be the answer. Should I put that on here? Unit vector form. And if you want to report it completely, you'd say something like 65 meters at 42 degrees, maybe north of east if we're in the clouds and we happen to be looking down. So once again, it depends on your perspective. Where are we as to how you can report it? Above horizontal, below horizontal, north of east, or generically I hat and j hat, depending on the problem. Any of those can come into play.